Yeah, come on in, Orel. Join us, won't you, please? That's a little bit like the dance I see him do on TV when he's moving through there. Absolutely. Absolutely. So as promised, Orel Hershiser joining us here in studio. Orel, good to see you again. How you been?
Good to be here. Is my mic on?
It is now. Yep. You are good to go. You are good to go.
We have all three on for you. So you can rotate wherever you want, whenever you want.
Yeah, you can take a new seat every segment if you'd like to do it.
Appreciate it.
All right, so let's start right here. You are being honored this weekend on Saturday as a legend of Dodger baseball. What does that mean to you?
Oh, boy. You know, when the announcement came out, it starts to send you back into your memory bank, of course, and you start reminiscing. And you start to really realize that you are nothing without all the people around you. And it started all the way back. I'm going to give portions of my speech, but I have longer than 3 to 5 minutes here, so it's kind of nice.
Knock yourself out.
Got all day.
3 to 5
all
minutes
day
at Dodger Stadium. And I'm going to have to worry about the echo. And I'm going to have to worry about, am I going to sound like I'm drunk because I listen to the echo plus talk. But it starts with my parents. It starts with learning respect and responsibility. And then learning that expectations should be fulfilled. And so when I was brought up by my parents, I moved from that family into the Dodger family, and that was something that set course because of the O'Malley family. And then you run into people like Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale and Roy Campanella and Maury Wills, and then you have a minor league career where you run into guys like Steve Garvey and Dusty Baker and Ron Say and Steve Yeager, and all of a sudden you're around them, but you're a minor leaguer, and that's the standard and the expectation. And then you make it to the big leagues through, winter ball and Arizona Instructional League and 4.5 years in the minors. And you have this gentleman named Tommy Lasorda, who then raises the bar even higher.
Sure.
And gives you the nickname Bulldog. And then you have teammates that help you along the way that are all trying as hard and are respecting the name on the front, not the name on the back. And you just become this other person by observing and trying and respecting and taking responsibility.
How much when you're calling a game, how much does part of what you were just explaining right there, do you reflect out of nowhere, right? Where it kind of just hits you and you start thinking about when you were a player and at the same time kind of understanding the seat that you're sitting in today?
Yeah, I think when you walked onto the bus and you walked by Vin Scully, you walked by Jaime Jarrín, you walked by Rene Cardenas, you walked by Ross Porter, you walked by Jerry Doggett, you realize that if you ever were in the front of the bus, that would be another huge responsibility. And every day, getting to broadcast a Dodger game when I'm assigned it, you walk into the Vin Scully press box. And you walk into a press box where we still wear coat and tie, as long as it's below about 92 degrees.
There's a cutoff, right?
We did change to this polo I have on when it gets a little hotter.
Good for now.
But for now, it's coat and tie. And the reason it's coat and tie with Joe and I and the others that come in there are because of Vinny. And Vinny taught us that the most important thing you bring into the booth is yourself. So I try to bring myself in there, my experiences, what was going on. And one of the things I learned early on about broadcasting is too much talking is too much talking. Vinny let a game breathe very well. Vinny also talked about things other than the game. And for me to be myself and talk about things that are other than the game, I need to give people an aha moment and then let them process it. So whether it's what I think the pitcher's feeling or what goes on in the dugout after a home run or in the celebration or what happened on a team bus or in the hotel, I need to take them someplace they've never been and wanted to be.
Those aha moments are what make great broadcasters. And I think you do an amazing job of it where Al hears me talk about it. I was listening to the game last night, and Orel said this, and Orel said that. And that as much baseball as I've watched and thought about, there's one or two every single night. I'm like, I never thought of it like that.
Something new.
I never heard that before. I never heard it quite said like that. And, when you and I talk, Al, we're trying to find ways to talk about the things that we talk about that make somebody go, I never really thought about like that. Do you just have them in you, or do you think, this is going to be one of those things that's going to make people say, oh, okay, that's new?
I think it's really weird and odd for me when people say you tell great stories, because I don't think I'm a good storyteller.
Wrong.
I am a person that when something happens in front of me, it reminds me of something. Mm. So if you ask me, tell me a story about Don Drysdale, I probably can't. Mm. But you put me in the middle of a scoreless streak, and I can tell you a story about Don Drysdale and Dick Dietz and Harry Wendelstedt, who was the umpire, and the ball hit Dietz with a 3-0 count and would have ruined his streak. And all of a sudden, Harry Wendelstedt, the home plate umpire, says, no, you didn't try and get out of the way. That's a strike. Drysdale gets out of a bases-loaded, no-out, 3-0 count to continue his streak. The same year that Gibson is doing his miraculous things in 1968, and because of that year of the pitcher, they lowered the mound.
Right.
So maybe that's a good story, but I don't know that story until I have a stimulus in front of me.
I want to go back to something. When you get honored the way that you are this weekend, Saturday against the Reds, he's being inducted as a legend of Dodger baseball. Of course, we're talking with Orel Hershiser. I'm a Dodger fan. I grew up in Los Angeles, and it's not just the hometown team to me. There are 2 or 3 teams in baseball that, to me, feel different than the other ones. It's the Yankees, it's the Dodgers, maybe the Cardinals and the Giants. There's a few that just feel different. To get inducted into any Hall of Fame or be inducted as a legend or whatever it is meaningful. And I don't mean to throw any sort of shade at anywhere else, but as a Dodger, is it mean more? Or is that just me being a Dodger fan?
I think it's you being a Dodger fan, but does it mean more because it happened to me personally? I think yes.
Yeah.
If I went into the Cleveland Indian Hall of Fame for the 3 years I was there in Cleveland, and we went to the playoffs every year and went to 2 World Series, didn't win one, lost in extra innings to the Marlins in Game 7, lost to the Atlanta Braves on a Tom Glavine 1-0 shutout with a Dave Justice home run. But I went back to Cleveland for a reunion, and they announced a whole bunch of the significant players, and I got a very nice ovation. I think Los Angeles tops that exponentially. Mm-hmm. This is where I was taught to be a professional. This is where I was taught to be a Dodger. This is where the fans embraced me no matter what. This is where I laid my head on the back of the cement wall of the Dodger Stadium dugout when I was removed from my last game and got a standing ovation, even though I was terrible. So I think they knew. I think Tommy knew, because then Tommy came down to the locker room, took me back into Dr. Job's medical office, and told me, Bulldog, it's over. And we wept like little boys.
Sure.
And that's when it was over. But now we get to have a celebration.
Sure.
We get to have a celebration, and I hope my voice doesn't crack like it is now.
Well-deserved, well-earned for sure. We're talking with Orel Hershiser. He's nice enough to come in studio, talking about the incredible honor that he's receiving this weekend as a legend of Dodger baseball. Come back, talk a little trade deadline, talk a little bit about the team that's being played right now. There's a lot of things going on with this team, and it's the only team I've ever seen that's in a transition and also comfortably in first place. It's a new one for me. So we'll get to all of that with Orel Hershiser. It's always the Waba Grill lunch hour on 710 right now, and thanks to our friends at Waba Grill, you got to try Waba Grill's new Asian-inspired Boom Boom Tacos with your choice of chicken, ribeye, steak, or shrimp. Visit your local Waba Grill location or order online for pickup or delivery at wabagrill.com. Waba Grill, eat smart, be healthy. More with Orel Hershiser coming up next right here on Travis Sliwa, 710 ESPN. Orel Hershiser joining us here in studio. He will be honored as a legend of Dodger baseball coming up on Saturday against the Reds. Ellie De La Cruz coming into the house. If you're a baseball fan, you know that name.
Not bad.
He's kind of fun to watch, right? He's not a bad player, Orel, right?
It's like 7 tools.
He's amazing. So take me through it. The trade deadline is coming up on Tuesday. If you are in a major league clubhouse on a team that is in contention like the Dodgers are, or you're on a team that is not, you might have a player coming or going. What's that vibe like in the clubhouse when you know that guys are on their way in or out?
It's different for sure. I think this clubhouse has continued to open their arms and to welcome new players very quickly. I think it was simple with Kike.
Sure.
I mean, Rosario, I'm sure, will get welcomed and feel comfortable. I think that whoever comes in, I think it will be an impact person. I don't think they will go borderline. The only way that they'll go borderline and fill the roster with what they appreciate as parts that maybe could hit a lefty or parts that could get a righty out, parts that are part of the bullpen that is a little different look than somebody else who's already down there. They've always gone for the significant piece. Mm-hmm. And so they're involved in every conversation. I listen to fans say, do you think this? Do you think that? I'm like, they are involved in every single conversation. And it's not ultimately going to be up to the Dodgers. It's going to be up to the other team
right.
that has to say yes. But the Dodgers will be there making their best effort with their evaluation of the equation of that particular trade and how it fits the roster and how it fits going forward. And they are very present tense oriented during this time. Is there some long-term look? Yeah. Aren't you glad we still have Walker Buehler? Aren't you glad we still have Julio Urias? So you can look at pieces on the team and say, they saved that guy and so glad they didn't trade him, when there was the 50-50 breakdown of trade him, we need that guy. Oh, don't trade him. We want him for the long term. And they're going through that equation on every single possibility.
Well, before the season started, there was a lot of chatter that the Dodgers, not that they were not going to be in contention, but you had teams like the Padres, teams like the Mets. You had other teams go out there and were very active at the in the offseason.
Right.
Here are the Dodgers. They're 15 games over 500, second best record in the NL. Mm-hmm. They've had a lot of significant players miss time throughout the season. Just how surprised are you with where they're sitting today, or is this what you expected?
Yeah, I don't think you can say this is what we expected. I think we expected to be in first place. I think we didn't expect to have this many injuries, especially the pitching staff and the rotation. I mean, we have an unbelievable rotation on the IL. You think about the struggles of the bullpen early. Those guys came into the year with magnificent resumes and didn't pitch to them, and now they are. I think the transition and the quote-unquote successful rebuild or successful transition that the fans have felt at the beginning of the year, the Dodgers planned it very well. But it felt like a deeper transition to most because it was new names. New names make you go, really? I got to get to know this guy? Really? This guy's near the end of his career, or he's got to have a resurgence? And now the locker room has proven that the decisions were right. And they are anticipating some moves maybe at the trade deadline. They are anticipating that we have done our job now. Let's finish it off. So, the J.D. Martinez, he's been magnificent. I mean, Jason Hayward, unbelievable what's going on. David Peralta in left field and off the bench as a left-handed hitter, great. The young guys that got an opportunity. One has succeeded and is still with us, and Outman and Vargas, who they haven't given up on, but he needed a respite and to reboot. His computer is in AAA. They did a magnificent job of mixing these veterans that you don't know, but really they understood that they can come back in our environment, and young guys that come up and contribute. And you remember, this is all on the backdrop of the luxury tax and how much does it cost us to spend the next dollar if we cross a certain threshold? And what does that do to us in the future of bringing an amazing, magnificent product to the rest of the fans of LA in future years? I think they've done a magnificent job again.
Orel Hershiser joining us here on the Trav and Slee Show. And obviously, like you just mentioned, there's been a lot of injuries on this team, but in particular on the pitching staff. You mentioned you have an all-star rotation that's unavailable at the moment, and maybe it wasn't by design necessarily and more out of necessity, but Bobby Miller, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, Michael Grove. We haven't seen Pepio yet. We saw him a little bit last year, and hopefully he's ready to go again. What do you make of this next wave of these young guys that getting thrown into not just big league action, but Dodger big league action, stay in first place big league action? We don't have time for you to grow on the job necessarily. We need you to perform on the job starting today.
Yeah, it's really hard to develop at the big league level, and especially as a pitcher, because as an everyday player, if you can catch the ball, they can let you take an offer. But if you don't get guys out at the big league level, you don't get another inning.
Right.
So you, as a regular player, you get exposed and can learn on the job. as a pitcher, if you're trying to learn on the job and failing in certain areas, you don't get the baseball anymore. You either are sitting, watching, or you're back down in the minor leagues developing again. So these guys were thrust into this situation, and most of them are still in development, and they really are in development. Even Bobby Miller, who has shined the brightest, is in development. They're learning on the job. I look at Michael Grove, and I look at his outings now compared to when he first got here. He wasn't throwing his curveball as often when he first got here. He was really trying to live with the fastball up. They were learning that the pitch that got people out in the minor leagues doesn't get people out in the big leagues because they don't chase up here. You have to have balls look like strikes, end up balls, or look like balls, end up strikes. You need to get ahead. The 0-1 count at the big leagues is such a huge difference than a 1-0 count. The 1-1 pitch that takes you to 1-2 compared to 2-1, completely different. And the ratios of what they used to do and get outs or get strikes has completely been turned upside down to them. And so in doing that, it takes a few outings to learn that I need a new spray pattern. I need to change speeds more often. I need a little bit more edge on my breaking ball. I need to throw my fastball a little bit lower when I go for the high strike. They don't chase the one at the shoulders. I've got to be 2 inches above the belt.
Is there? And that's exactly how I explain it to him. He just doesn't listen. I mean, exactly how you just described it.
I appreciate it. You know what? I'm going to go back to your old shows and listen to that so I can learn something.
No, just take my word. Just take my word. Yeah, I'll go back.
Is there any way to explain and articulate? You just did a good job, but
I appreciate that.
Just how good major league hitters are, and just how thin the margins between I got him and the ball's off the wall.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. Just the fact that they can take the ball that's just off the edge of the plate and a AAA hitter or a AA hitter swings at that, and now you're 1-2 or the guy's out. That's unbelievable just to watch that. The information exchange has completely changed, and it's really unbelievable because hitting is down, but hitting well is up. So when the ball makes contact, it's louder, and it's more extra base hits and more home runs, but it's not hit at the same average. So the game theory has changed. The offensive theory has changed, which then changes pitching theory. And so I think the pendulum has swung so far to power hitting and strikeouts are okay, and the three ultimate...
3 true outcomes.
Yeah, the 3 true outcomes with the walk, the strikeout, and the home run. I think the pendulum's starting to move back to contact and line drives and hard ground balls with a certain portion of your order. And the big league hitter is very hard to get out.
Or we're in the background here. Shohei is about to pitch a complete game. So it's 6-0 Angels right now. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on, I know Ohtani has been the topic of conversation really for the last couple of years. Was it the topic of conversation this entire year and what the Angels were going to do potentially by the trade deadline? Your thoughts on what you see when you see a player like this doing what he's doing, just your overall thoughts on what Shohei's been doing here these last couple of years.
Well, he's a remarkable athlete, and that's probably an understatement. I think everyone was infatuated before he even came to the United States in Major League Baseball. They were infatuated with him. I actually made a scouting trip with Andrew Friedman and a few of our scouts over there, and actually to Japan for a week, and we followed him around. We weren't allowed to talk to him because that would have been tampering, but we went and saw his games, saw his workouts, saw his BP, saw his side work. But at the time, he was struggling with the elbow issue, but we still got to see him probably throwing at about 70-75%. It was still, at that time, was one of the best sliders I had ever seen in my life, and he wasn't even throwing full bore. He's going, if they don't trade him, which looks like they're buyers now, not sellers, so he's going to be an Angel for the rest of the year. But everybody's going to want him, and I don't think it's going to be about money for Shohei. I think it's going to be about where he wants to play and how often he wants to win year in and year out, because he's going to see the timeline of his skills start to diminish over the course of history. 35-year-olds look a little different and swing a little different and react a little different to 95-mile-an-hour fastballs. And so will his 35-year-old arm that has a lot of innings under it. So if he wants to be part of something and we could sell the city of Los Angeles, it wouldn't be that big of a move for him. So I hope we have a shot at him.
Yeah, I I'm on board. I might have mentioned it once or twice that might be something that I'm interested in.
But it won't be up to the Dodgers. It'll be up to Shohei again, just like trades are. There has to be two parties that want to be in the room together and want to settle something, and they both have to be motivated to get a deal done. And if Shohei is the guy that wants to get the deal done, I know the Dodgers want to get it done too.
So this is a little Shohei related, but your resume has a long list of accomplishments. You're a Cy Young Award winner, a World Series champion, a World Series MVP, an NL and ALCS MVP. You won a Gold Glove. You're a 3-time All-Star, also a Silver Slugger. And for people that don't know what that means, you were the best hitter at that position for that season. Okay, this is when pitchers still got to hit in the National League. As not just a pitcher who could hit, but as a good hitting pitcher, when you watch what this dude does day after day, knowing how much work it takes to be an elite pitcher, and he's the biggest, best slugger in baseball, can you even reconcile those two things, knowing how much work goes into both?
Well, the first and foremost is, you look at the ability, and to try and recognize you go. Very few people in the world will have that kind of ability ever. The DNA, whatever way, the genetic makeup. There are a few before him but the culture didn't allow them to be that. Mm-hmm. I think Fernando was really close.
Really?
I think Darren Dreifert, really close. Rick Ankiel, who we saw switch over. I don't know what kind of pitcher Peralta was, but the thing that separates Ohtani is he runs like the wind.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So that last component of ability to hit for power, hit for average, throw a baseball, spin a baseball from the mound, and then the speed, you go, he's on a separate planet. And so there's very few that can do what he's doing, and we won't see this for a long, long time, but we will see it again because the culture has changed to allow people to be two-way players. And if somebody is as talented as he is, you will have the equity to say, if you don't let me do both, I'm not doing it at all. And he had that equity.
That's what I was going to ask is, will this in 10 years, no one's saying there's ever going to be another Shohei, but in 10 years, will there be, oh yeah, here's another guy that's batting around 250 and also is 6-6 on the mound, whatever it is that just going to become more common because of Shohei?
I think it will be. I don't know how quick the curve will exponentially go up or we'll recognize that it's happening more often. But yes, I think we're going to see more and more examples. I think we might even get to a place where there's this thing called a pitching staff with no starters or relievers. I mean, we're starting to see it in certain places. My day, you would have said, no way. But they even changed the rules of the roster configurations, right? Where you can have up to 13 pitchers. And all of a sudden, they find out a 11th pitcher or a 12th pitcher on a staff is more valuable than a right-handed hitter or a defensive replacement or a pinch runner. And so, again, game theory, trying to win games changes. And I think we will see more and more two-way players as we go into the future.
All right, let's talk about more Dodgers down the stretch coming up. Orel Hershiser joining us here in studio. He's being honored as a legend of Dodgers baseball coming up Saturday night at Dodger Stadium. More with Orel when we come back. It's Travis Sliwa, 710 ESPN. Travis Sliwa Show has teamed up with Waba Grill to give away lunch for your entire office. Listen tomorrow during the Waba Grill lunch hour on 710 for the cue to call, and you could be the Waba Grill Workplace of the Week. That's tomorrow on 710 ESPN. Thanks to Waba Grill. Waba Grill, eat smart, be healthy. Orel Hershiser joining us here in studio. He is being honored as a legend of Dodger baseball coming up on Saturday at Dodger Stadium, and an incredible honor. I'm hoping that what you suggested, that if I mention a name, it will spark an idea.
Oh, boy.
Okay. Was Kirk Gibson as terrifying as I thought he was when I was a kid watching him play? Because watching him come up, I'm like, I don't want to mess with that guy.
That's true. You don't. You don't want to mess with him. I mean, he proved it to me on my first plane flight with him. We had this little game called Flinch.
Okay.
And it's like, when you walk by a person, you try and make them flinch. So you act like you're going to hit them in the stomach, or you act like you're going to punch them in the head, or you do something, but you don't actually do it, but you try and make them flinch. Mm-hmm. And he's walking down the aisle, and I'm about row 17, and he's walking down the aisle, and here he comes. I go, this is a perfect way to get to know my teammate, kind of goof around with him a little bit. And I put my arm out in the aisle and see if he flinches. And he kind of flinched a little bit, and I said, you flinched. and he forearm shivered me right in the chest, right, and knocked the wind out of me. And it hurt really bad. It probably brought tears to my eyes. But I said, "Oh, okay, you don't play flinch." and I learned really quick that he had a football mentality when it came to baseball. You know, and Jesse Orozco found out really quick.
The eye black in the hat.
Eye black on the hat, the first spring training game, and Kirk was being laughed at as he walked back from center field to the line to run one more sprint. The laughing turned to even figuring out he had eye black on his hat and on his forehead, and he ran off the field and quit that day. And we had to convince him to come back, and Jesse Orozco had to apologize him next day in front of everybody in the locker room, and Jesse was glad that we were all there with him during the apology in case Kirk would have went off. We could have pulled
extra
of him.
motivation.
Yeah,
Right.
Sure, next time he walked by you, there was nothing. Put your hands in your pocket.
No,
Hi, Kirk.
Yeah.
Not even that. It wasn't even Kirk. It's Mr. Gibson. It's Mr. Gibson.
What do you thought of?
But I got to cut
Yeah,
you
yeah.
off because it made Kirk sound bad. I will tell you that Kirk Gibson is one of the best mates you will ever have because he will either kill for you or kill you. Okay? There's different ends of the spectrum.
Sure.
And now I absolutely love him. He absolutely loves me. And everything is fine. We don't play flinch anymore.
Not after that.
He's still nervous.
I don't blame him.
Yeah, I don't
Would
blame you. I don't blame you. What have you thought of all the rule changes that baseball has had here? Yeah, you really call it the last 2 seasons, but just you surprised how easy of a transition that it's been, how quiet it's been as far as complaining goes. I feel like use the pitch clock as an example in the beginning. How are you going to do this? How are you going to execute it? I feel like it's been very, very smooth. Has that surprised you?
I think it has proven that baseball did a tremendous amount of research because this was a huge step to implement all these rules all at once. So it shows that the research they did in the minor leagues, they really thought this through. They thought through what would be the reaction of the big league player under the pressure and the amounts of money they possibly could make or where they were in their careers and changing it for a 17-year veteran as much as for the rookie coming up that experienced some of this in the minor leagues. They got it right. And the commissioner has taken a lot of heat in a lot of different areas from the hunk of metal comment about the World Series trophy through what they did through the pandemic and different things. He has been a target. But as far as leading this, he brought the enjoyment of the game back, and you could say, yeah, because the games are shorter, but it's the pace of the game that is more enjoyable.
No doubt.
It's harder as a broadcaster
Yeah.
because the pitch clock eliminates a lot of replays. You remember when you used to see pitch sequences on how a guy got out, so you'd see pitch 1, 2, 3, 4, and get to the 5th pitch, and that's why the strikeout happened. We don't get time to do
for
that. Joe Davis doesn't have as much time to do his Vin Scully role where he breaks down Memorial Day or July 4th holiday because there's just no time. I mean, there were things that we've had to adjust in the booth and, of course, way more things that the players on the field have had to adjust. But I think all the adjustments have been fantastic for the entertainment value of the game.
Orel Hershiser joining us here on Travis Sliwa. I asked Nolan Ryan this question, and he gave me such a great answer. I want to ask you the same thing. He's Nolan
So
Ryan.
you're going to compare me to Nolan Ryan?
Yes.
He threw 100 miles an hour, all right? That's not very nice.
There's different styles, Orel.
I tried to bunt for a hit off the guy, and he threw the next one right at my head.
Bad idea. Don't do that.
I think you should move on to the next question.
Next one. What's the backup plan?
I asked
my
him,
gosh.
I said, was there a guy
Yeah.
that just wore you inexplicably? I don't
for
get
sure.
it. And his answer was Mark Belanger, who I think hit about 200
Really?
in his whole career. He goes,
Yeah.
and every time it's like, I can't get Mark Belanger out. Was
Yeah.
there a guy that just, I don't get it. Everything I'm throwing at this guy, he's barreling.
Yeah, first and foremost, you just start the 10,000-foot view is low ball hitting lefties. Because
Okay.
I was a sinker ball pitcher as my foundational pitch. And then you move to a crazy right-hander that wore armor on his left arm because you needed to pitch him in Craig Biggio. So if you go to Baseball Reference and you go to matchups Hershiser against Biggio, I think you're going to see like a 450 average
kidding.
and some home runs and some doubles and all the crazy stuff. So it's really hard to get guys out with armor. I mean, Barry, when he wore the armor, then they made the rules about the armor because Barry's armor protruded about 1.25 inches away from his skin with the big, the rivets and all the stuff. So once you take the fear factor away from the inside pitch, and I never hit anybody on purpose. They always had 60 feet 6 inches to get out of the way. But if they turn the outside corner into the middle of the plate, something needs to be done. And what needs to be done is you need to throw a ball to the inside corner or off the plate inside, and you don't want to miss over the middle.
Of course not.
Because now the middle is where they're looking for it also. So I think that the armor guys were the toughest guys against me.
Is that gone? I remember Don Drysdale, I maybe get this a little bit wrong, but it's mostly right. Said, look, the hitter gets half and I get half. I'm just not telling him which half I want.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
mean, Gibson was like that. Drysdale was like that. Koufax had so much ability, he didn't have to be like that.
Pedro Martinez was like that,
Pedro
right?
Martinez.
Is that gone? Is that just not part of the game anymore?
No, definitely there's less inside pitches with a purpose. I think it's a cultural thing. I think, back in the 70s, violence in sports started to go away. Third man in fighting in hockey, baseball, bench clearing brawls. If you left the bench, you were going to be suspended. The violence and then the inside pitch started to go away because, remember, the outside pitch started to get called 6-8 inches off the plate. Mm-hmm. If you look back at Atlanta games, and I think Ted Turner was bribing the umpires.
Levon Hernandez had a pretty good night that night.
Oh, my gosh. Against us in Cleveland, Levon Hernandez, oh, my God.
Ball was 2 feet off the plate.
Eric Gregg is like, that strike zone is way too big, Eric. I mean, it was ridiculous. But, I mean, you'd have to be a huge baseball fan to go back and find Levon Hernandez with Eric Gregg behind the plate in a playoff game. But when you found it, you'd be like, that's not a strike. What were we talking about?
Pitching inside.
I just think, slowly but surely from the 70s on with the third man in fighting in hockey, and then it became a topic throughout all sports, that violence or retaliation became more penalized and slowly went out of the culture. And we have the same thing at second base with the Utley rule, and then we have the same thing with as far as the contact there. We have the same thing now at home plate with what a catcher can do when he's about to receive the ball. I don't think it's anything against the toughness of the players. I think it's the culture of the game and the audience that has changed the strategies.
Or one question on this will apply more to the Dodgers today, but also some other rosters that are out there. How important is the chemistry piece? I've heard Mookie say this year that he feels like the team's got incredible camaraderie. Mm-hmm. And on paper, there were some teams that you look at coming into the season. I'll use the Padres as an example. On paper, it just unbelievable.
Right.
They have never found a way this year to click. Mets, maybe you can give a little bit more excuses, some injuries here and there, but they've been what the Mets have.
Yeah.
How much does that come into play, do you think, of some of the success that the Dodgers have had? Kind of take away just pure talent, the chemistry as well.
I think it's a huge piece. I think it's hard to evaluate how big a piece it is, but when you see it, it's amazing. When you don't see it, you go, it's missing. But to put weight on it is a huge weight. If you go back to 88 with Mickey Hatcher and Dempsey and, the stunt men and then everybody on the field with Soch and with Gibby and everybody, Saxey, I think it's a huge piece when the locker room says that it's going good and that it's exceptional, because it's not a topic that you want to bring up when it's bad, mm-hmm. and you won't bring it up when it's neutral because it's not real news and it feels like you're being the rah-rah guy. You're only going to bring it up when it's exceptional. And so we also have to remember that Freddie and Mookie are now ultimately the true leaders of this team with others like Kirsch, because now Justin Turner's gone, Belly's gone, and others. And you can't have a change in team chemistry without a vacancy of leadership, because then it's a mutiny. If there is a current leader and you feel like maybe you want to take it a different direction or enhance what's going on, you look like you're part of a mutiny compared to when there's a vacancy and now you fill it. And I think that these guys are filling it in a magnificent way. And I am not talking anything bad about Justin Turner or anybody who's left. Justin Turner, I did his wedding, so I'm not, I love the guy and he loves me and Courtney. But there became a vacancy in the room, and the vacancy was filled by some great people.
Last one, Orel, before we let you go. And again, he's being honored as a legend of Dodger baseball coming up on Saturday at Dodger Stadium. And this is me attempting to get you to tell another story. when you were talking about Levon Hernandez and, hey, Eric Gregg, that's too big of a strike zone. Yeah. What's the right way to chirp at an umpire? And did Tommy Lasorda know how to do it the right way?
Well, it's another cultural thing that's changed, right? I mean, Whitey Herzog, Sparky Anderson,
sure.
Billy Martin, Tommy Lasorda. I mean, you're talking about guys who were ejected an awful lot then compared to now. There's ways to do it subtly, and there's ways to say you've gone so far and this feels like a vendetta, or you're so bad, something needs to be done to embarrass you too, that it gets a little over the top. Again, less and less in this culture compared to before, but the subtle ways is using your catcher. The subtle ways is when you were a pitcher, when you were going up to bat, you could talk to the guy.
How do you do it? What do you say?
Oh, you just say, is this the strike zone we're going to work with all day? It's a subtle communication between an umpire, and there are some umpires. I mean,
do they tell you when they kick one?
Yes, they will.
Yeah.
And they'll tell your catcher, and you can go back up and tell them. And now that they have the iPads on the bench, we didn't have the TV. You had to go back in the locker room and look at it on a VCH. What was that? What was that?
VHS.
Yeah, whatever it's called. Yeah,
it had a V.
Yeah, it had a V in it. Hey, get off me! I'm not coming on the show anymore.
Take it easy, Trav.
It's okay.
I'm just trying to help.
Mute his mic. But I think it's different. I think the batters can go back and go, oh my God, I was angry and it was right, and I will let him know subtly next at bat. And I think there's ways to say, oh my God, I was angry in public and I need to go up there and apologize and say, hey, I got wrong on that. I was wrong on that one. So yeah, much more information in the game today.
Orel Hershiser will be honored as a legend of Dodger baseball coming up on Saturday against the Cincinnati Reds. Orel, it's always a treat to have you in here. I look forward to it every single time. Despite my VHS joke, I hope that you come back for
Not cool.
No, I appreciate it. It's a little lighter than being on Petros and Money. I know that's another station.
That's all right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure, guys, and thank you so much. And to the Dodger fans out there, thank you for being so much a part of this memory. And everything that I've been through with you, it's extra special when the house is packed. It's extra special when you cheer. It's extra special when you show up and care about what we do for a living. So thank you very much.
Incredibly well said and well deserved. That's coming up on Saturday. A legend of Dodger baseball, Orel Hershiser. More when we get back. Travis Sliwa, 710 ESPN.